Welcome to Film Strip. These podcasts are spoiler-filled as we discuss the plots, characters, and themes of the films in review. All content used or discussed in these podcast episodes is the property of the respective owners and used under the Fair Use Act, Section 504(c)(2), Title 17.
Welcome back to the Star Trek Retrospective Film Strip Podcast. I'm Jay.
And I'm Nate.
We're here to talk about Star Trek Insurrection, starring Patrick Stewart, Jonathan Frakes, Brent Spiner, LeVar Burton, Michael Dorn, Gase McFadden, Marina Sirtis, with F. Murray Abraham, Donna Murphy, and Andrew Zerbe. Directed by Jonathan Frakes, released in December 1998 on a $70 million budget. Gross $117.8 million at the box office, so was a success. But as we talked about at the end of our last episode, Nate, this one's not held in high regard among the TNG universe, particularly the cinematic part of it.
It isn't. And we're definitely going to delve into reasons for that. There's a myriad of reasons why, which is a shame because after First Contact, I think that's when Star Trek was hitting a peak.
Yeah, I agree.
When First Contact came, it was the next gen crew established themselves as the primary, crew in the Star Trek universe. You had Deep Space Nine hitting their stride. You had Voyager about to begin. I mean, Voyager had just begun, and it was at its peak. But now 1998 when this came out. Now we're seeing the last seasons of certain TV shows, and the fatigue is starting to set in a little bit, and this one did not help.
Yeah, Enterprise the show had come along here this time, right? As well, I seem to remember that.
It was right around this time. I can't remember when it debuted. I think it debuted after this.
It may have. I knew it was roughly the same time frame, and I remember it distinctly because it had that pop song for the theme song.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah,
which was what Rod Stewart did a version of it, but that wasn't the one that was on the show. I think that was a different. It was a different singer.
It was definitely a different singer, but I can't. Oh, actually, this was after this. Enterprise came in 2001.
Okay. So Enterprise was a little bit later than that. Okay, I had that background. I knew it was roughly same era though, because I know where I was at the time. I was wrapping up undergrad, getting ready to go to grad school. So wasn't doing a lot in the movie space at this point. I was doing a lot more music stuff. So I was kind of out on the fact that there was a new Star Trek movie. Ended up though seeing this, December. When you go to college in the town that you grow up in, and all of your friends are now in college and they're not from there, and they go away at December break, you have oodles of time on your hands. And so I was working obviously, but I didn't have anything else to do. And I was going into my last semester of school, which was all internships. So I didn't have any classes left, anything like that. And so nothing really to occupy my time except playing music. And then, my job and all this other time during the 2 week holiday break. So I went and saw this in theaters just by myself. Because back in those days, you could just roll into a theater for $4.25, on a weeknight and watch a movie. And so I went and saw this, having really the only frame of reference for any of this was like I liked First Contact. I thought it was awesome, and I was like, okay, if it's going to be like that, I'm down for this. And I remember walking out of the theater going, it kind of reminds me of the few times I watched the television show. It feels like a TV episode. I don't know. And I talked to a friend who was more into Trek and had watched the show. He said, oh yeah, that was very much like a two-parter. It was sort of his sum up of it. And now last time you had like the most awesome story ever of seeing this in theaters. What was your story about seeing it this one?
So this one was, I remember I didn't go on opening night, but I went the next night. Because I remember seeing the trailer and all of a sudden so for me, Star Trek First Contact, that was the only movie I've ever seen twice in the same day in the theater. And that was really fun and fantastic. But this was very, very different. I went to go see it. I had low expectations because for me, I was ready for the next thing. So First Contact addressed the Borg. So the next logical story would be Q. I think a lot of people at Trek conventions are talking about, it's like, oh my God, they gotta put Q in there. And I think for me, here I am in my, late teens, early 20s, and I'm been big in Star Trek my whole life. I was like, oh my God, this would be the ultimate. This would be even better than First Contact if they bring Q. So I think I set myself up with these high expectations of seeing Q. And when that didn't happen, and I saw the trailer, and I was like, I don't know who any of these aliens are. I don't know anything about this planet. This has nothing to do with the Dominion War. There's nothing for Deep Space Nine. And it looked like a TV episode. And there's, we'll talk about the budget here in a second and the effects and how that was very different from First Contact. But it, so I was like, okay, well, it's Star Trek, so I'll go see it. And I remember going to see it and just walking out like, what did I just see? This was not good. It really just was, and there really wasn't an actual insurrection either. I mean, it was like, I don't
Yeah.
know why they called it that.
It's
It
more like Star
was
Trek Minor Inconvenience. It's
Yes,
what it
that's
comes off like.
exactly what it is. It really did come across that way. It to me it came across as like all the Trek actors just wanted to have some fun and not to do anything too serious. And it was didn't feel. I mean, the acting, the dialogue, the script, all really bad. Just really, really bad. Um, I don't know. It was not my favorite. And I remember, yeah, I had a buddy of mine who was a Trekkie who didn't go see it the night that I went. He wanted to go see it. And I was like, no, just you go see it. I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah,
And that's bad. That's
yeah.
bad because considering how big of a Trek fan I am.
I was gonna say, yeah. I mean, if you walk out of it going like, if you had the ick for it, as the kids say these days, then
Yeah. Well,
I feel validated in my sort of like, okay, that wasn't really what I
what's
wanted
on?
to
I
do.
mean, First Contact with this super super high bar.
Yeah,
I mean, it.
for two-thirds the budget, by the way.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. And now you've got, I mean, Insurrection does not have, I mean, we're now used to the awesomeness that was First Contact.
mhm.
We have the depth and the darkness that is Deep Space Nine and the mystery that is Star Trek Voyager. There's some really good Trek on at this point. And then you have this movie, you're like, ooh, why? Like, this
It,
was the TV shows are far better right now. They're far superior, and you're not mentioning anything with the TV. There's nothing to do with Deep Space Nine or anything.
well, you mentioned it, and I think we can get into it as we talk after we talk about the plot here and stuff. But it does come off like they just wanted to kind of hang out and have a good time, and everyone does seem to be having a pretty good time on
Oh,
the
it
set.
does. I mean, yeah,
But yeah, it doesn't look like there was a lot of, I don't know, force in it, like no one,
right.
everyone seemed to be super invested last time because, and I know I hate to make these comparisons, but just for cinematic purposes, that was like their Wrath of Khan. It was a
Yeah,
deep story, but it had a lot of action. It was a ton of Picard getting to do his, acting stuff. So Patrick Stewart's bringing his A game and all that. And goodness, now. I don't know. It's just this seems like a complete departure from all of the energy that was. And I mean, we mentioned, Frakes is directing again. It's still Rick Berman is behind this. Michael Piller is one of the writers. He had written a lot in the Star Trek franchise. So this isn't people that aren't involved in the process again. It's not like they brought in just a bunch of hacks to make this story. But what we
yeah,
got out of it is definitely a step in a different direction than where we were going last time. And
yeah.
um,
This is
uh,
sort of like the in some in an odd way, this is sort of like the Dallas Mavericks. You have this you just went to the finals, you're at the peak of your game, you got like the bet now you've got Luca standing on his own, you got this team with an identity, and you're waiting for the next step in 2025. And what it? No, it's at the Anthony Street Close Davis, and your big star. I mean, your big guy's gone, and that identity is gone now. But they're
yeah,
giving you something. It's like, oh, we're still here, and we're
yeah.
going to charge more
Yeah,
for your tickets too.
as an aside for that, by the way, that may be $100 million mistake. So we'll have to have
Oh
you on Sports on the
yeah.
Ground to
Oh
talk
my
about that as we
goodness.
get into the
Oh,
playoffs.
that
But
was the worst.
yeah, it's a bad movie. Well, let's do the plot summary here, as it were. This one's pretty basic, so I'll hit you up with it again. What me and the wonderful AI of Gemini came up with together on this. So, Data experiences an unexpected malfunction while observing the Baku, a race with a unique immortal existence that's fueled by metaphysical particles from the planet's rings. Captain Picard disobeys orders and investigates because he's concerned about Data. And the Sona, a decaying race reliant on technology, are revealed to be working with Admiral Doherty of the Federation to forcibly relocate the Baku, allowing the Sona to harvest those particles and prolong their own lives, even though it's going to cost the planet. and ultimately lead to its destruction. The Enterprise crew also experiences a lot of the rejuvenating effects of the planet while with the Baku and form deeper relationships with each other and members of the race. Further investigation reveals a hidden Federation holoship simulating the Baku village, and that Data's malfunction was a result of a Sona attack after he discovered that ship. Picard learns that the Sonar are actually exiled Baku, who didn't see that coming, who abandoned their peaceful lifestyle for technology and were subsequently banished. This revelation exposes their true motive behind their desperate plan, revenge, and a desire to reclaim the life extending properties of the planet. Ra'afo, the Sona's leader, played by F. Murray Abraham, kills Doherty when he hesitates and determined to complete the harvest. In the climax, though, Picard, facing execution, convinces the Sona Gallatin to betray Ra'afo, and Picard orchestrates a deception, transporting Ra'afo and his crew to the holoship while he sabotages the harvester. Ra'afo, discovering the trick, tries to restart the process manually, but Picard triggers the harvester's self-destruction, killing the Ra'afo. The Enterprise rescues Picard, and the remaining Sonar are welcomed back by the Baku. Picard facilitates the reunion between Gallatin and his Baku mother, and the Enterprise crew, having experienced the rejuvenating effects, depart to continue their mission among the stars. And that's the straight through line. It's pretty simple. And like I said, Nathan, you more or less confirmed, feels very much like a two-parter of a TV show in a lot of ways. So I want to ask you though, are these two groups of people anyone we've ever met before on the show, the Baku, the Sona, any of
No,
that?
the only time any of these are mentioned, or the Sona are mentioned once in Deep Space Nine when Wayun is talking to Damar, and it's hinted that the Sona are making the Ketracel white for the foot soldiers for the Jem'Hadar,
Mhm.
and they're the ones that, and the Ketracel white is what keeps them in line, to serve, to do the bidding of the Dominion, do the bidding of the founders, and that's it. Like that's it. And on top of, you're talking about a race we've never seen, we've heard mentioned in passing once, and now they're the main people in this film. You've also got this. So nobody else in the film are big stars. Yes, you got F. Murray Abraham, but he's in a cheesy hammed up role.
Yeah.
But like anybody on the planet itself, like all the people on the planet, there's nobody I've ever seen before ever. And it's just like they basically just got like, oh, this guy was in a commercial. All right, fine, you're going to be in this blockbuster movie.
I mean,
Um,
Donna Murphy's like a five-time Tony Award winner. Like she was a
she
big
is,
deal, and she's
yeah, she
wasted
was a
in
big deal
this, like completely
yeah,
wasted.
she was a big deal on Broadway, but there's a
Yeah,
lot of people have
and,
no idea
and
who she was.
Anthony Zerbe's like this ultimate sea-level character actor that you've seen in a
Mhm.
hundred things, but you wouldn't know him from anything.
Wouldn't know any of them. It's like, was he
Oddly
on a
enough, I
plane?
know him from Kiss Meets the Phantom in the Park, which might be a
Oh
stay
wow.
tuned someday. He was also in a James Bond movie as one of the
Oh,
bad
was he?
guys. Yeah, he was in
Oh
License
my
to Kill.
goodness.
Yeah, so I think
Oh
he's
man, I haven't seen that in a minute. Yeah,
yeah, but he's
yeah, it's just one of those things. It's like I don't like.
yeah, but I mean he's playing the Admiral here, so it's like it's
Yeah.
but it
Now
I mean
I've seen him in stuff before. Yeah.
yeah, and the Admiral Darby character, the thing about it that just gets me is that you have this guy, and it's obvious that he's up to no good. Like it's very
Yeah.
clear that he's up to no good. Like you're going to see this. Like
Yeah.
it's going to play out.
It was so predictable though.
Yeah, it really is. And it's just and I want to talk about too like the effects of the people here because this almost feels like they're trying to do this metaphor for there's all these people that grew up in the Midwest or more normal people and then they go to California and they discover plastic surgery, but then they want to come back after the cost of living's too high and bring all that back to, Idaho or
Uh-huh.
wherever they're from. I feel like that's some of what this movie's trying to say, but boy, it's ham-fisted in a lot of ways and overheated.
Yeah, oh, I can see that. I can actually kind of relate a little bit where I live at right now. I work in this place called Clark County, and it's a rural county, and they are very, very good about preserving history and not letting chains in. They have one grocery store in the entire county. You'll never ever see like a plaza anywhere. Like they're very fiercely rural and local business, very small. You go one county over to Loudoun County, and it's all the people. Every square inch of land is for development and progress, and
Yeah.
you've got all your big shopping malls, you've got all your big data centers, you've got all this stuff, and then the people that they move to Loudoun County to or they move down to here to work, and they work in Loudoun County and see all these great things, and they come to Clark County. It's like, oh, hey, look, let's put all this stuff here. And then they get really angry when the county says we're not going to have that here.
Yeah,
Um,
you know what movie
yeah.
does that a whole lot better? Doc
Hmm.
Hollywood, with Michael
Hmm.
J. Fox. That
I would rather watch Doc Hollywood 10 times over than Insurrection.
100%. Doc Hollywood's a kind of an underrated movie. I think it's one of the forgotten ones from his oeuvre
Oh,
there
yeah.
because it's really good. Got a great soundtrack too, by the way. Chesney Hawks for the win. But yeah, I remember watching this and watching it this time, and it was all coming back to me because again, it's not terribly complicated plot, and that's exactly what I thought of. I was like, oh, these are it's almost on one hand like, oh, these are the people that fight progress, and then they get mad when the progressives come back. And I was like, no, actually, I think this movie's on the Clark County side, if you will. Like, no,
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
Oh,
like,
for
hey,
sure.
like it's okay to have both. Like, you need both in the world. Like, it's fine.
Hmm.
I mean, I live in Charlotte. And it's a very urban industrial area and stuff, but there's
Oh,
still
yeah.
little tweaks of like the old farmland and stuff. But you really got to get out of the
Hmm.
county and out of town to see a lot of it. And if you talk to native Charlotteans, they remember if they've been here, long enough, they remember before any of that was there, and they talk about it like, oh yeah, all those buildings used to be nothing but trees and farmland and stuff. And you can see like the Sona are again these people that they've lost their ability to keep their youthful vigor and stuff. So that's why their faces are all like Brazil, and all
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And like you say, it's not just a hammy performance from F. Murray Abraham as Ralphio. He looks like he's wearing a piece of ham on his face. Like it's pretty bad,
It
man.
does. It really is. I mean, you're looking at again, let's talk a little bit about the effects budget on this. I mean, the special effects, I mean, so that's what you want to do with the aliens, to the sonar. You want to make them just stretchy faces? That was the concept. I don't understand. Like that was, and you're
Yeah.
right, it looks just cheaply done.
It looks like
Um,
silly putty that's gotten too warm and it's, just
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
drooping at this point now. Like I don't know.
Oh yeah,
Like
I'm sure they spent a fortune on all the hours it took to put all those sonar in that makeup. And
yeah,
then on top of that, the effects when they're out in space and the drones, oh my God, the drone effects are horrible.
yeah, it's
And
it's so wild
it
how
just
bad they look too. Like
and they spent, and like you mentioned before, they spent more money on it. But here's the thing, guess who they used for Generations and First Contact for the effects?
the same TV
Industrial
crew.
Light and Magic. No, Industrial
Oh,
Light and Magic.
oh,
And
they
they
might have
didn't
been a
bring him
little
back for this
busy
time.
in 1998.
They were actually working on Deep Impact.
Yeah,
They were
yeah.
too busy working on Deep Impact.
Well,
And
this was also right before a little movie called The Phantom Menace came out, and they might have been a little
yeah,
busy
and they
working
were working
on
on that as well. They were
all
already
of
working on
that.
that. They were working on Deep Impact. So they were, yeah, this was, you could tell, like, there were even some of the space battles were just
And,
awful. I mean, just the effects were not good.
yeah, and I want to be clear too. I'm okay if they want to do a less effects story and maybe ground it on something or whatever. I think that can
Mhm.
work. The problem is when you try to still do all the big effects space shots and you want to have this grounded story, it's going to look cheap. It's going to look like a low end TV budget, because
I mean, look,
again,
Star Trek 4 did not have much in the way of special effects. I
no,
mean,
but it worked, right?
it was
And
great. It was great. Yeah.
the thing everybody bangs on Star Trek 5 for, or what, or how bad the effects look because they cut the budget on it, as we discussed on the episode. Well, unlike Star Trek 5, though, that actually had a story buried in there somewhere, this one doesn't have a lot. And the fact that it goes on for as long as it does, like we should mention, it's a pretty short for a Trek movie. It's just over an hour and 40 minutes long. And
Yeah.
it's really about an hour and 30 when you boil it down. And that's why I say, like, it feels like two 45, 46-minute episodes just smashed into each other.
It does. What's interesting is Marina Sirtis during the premiere, she fell asleep at the premiere
I can
when
see
she was watching
why.
it. Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
she has
it's
nothing to
not
do with
a
this movie, but yeah, I mean,
yeah.
it's, yeah.
The speaking of not having anything to do with the movie, the women don't have much to do. Like Troy and Crusher. I mean, what has
Yeah,
she got? 5 lines
why
the
are
entire
they
movie?
here if they're not going to do anything? I mean, really,
Exactly.
like
Exactly.
I know they have to have them, but it is a complete waste of that. And I think that's always been the challenge for the next generation is they had a bigger cast that each had a lot of depth to them. And
Hmm.
how are you going to give everybody enough to do things with when you know you're going to spend significant time with Picard and Data? every time. They're going to
Right.
be your two big ones. Jonathan Frakes, oddly enough, is it seems to always be willing to just take the back seat as Riker. Like, even though he's second in command,
Yeah.
he's fine to just sort of float around and direct and do what he does. But they do stuff with LeVar Burton here, and they get he gets to remove his eye thing, so his eyes heal because he's on the magic planet of dust or whatever. You get
So
all
this is interesting.
yeah,
It's three straight. Speaking of Riker, this is three straight Trek films now where um the Enterprise is under attack by an enemy, and Picard is elsewhere, and Riker is commanding the ship. So you saw it in
right.
Generations when the ship crashes.
Hmm.
When the Klingons attack them. You saw it in First Contact when Borg were on the ship and they couldn't get off. And now you see it again, like Picard's leading the away team down. Like who did again? Isn't there anybody saying, "Hey, look, you've done this before. It hasn't worked out well. Can you? You're the captain. You need to stay on. Why don't Riker lead the away team?" But no, Riker's on the ship,
That there's like
and
a
it gets attacked again.
there's like a graduate class in leadership that could be taught out of that, by the way, Nate. I want you to know,
Yeah,
and like how to not let go, because I feel like it's not that Riker is incapable of leading the ship. He does a great job every time he does it, but he
yeah, he
could
does.
do everything that Picard does on the ground stuff. He could handle it. Maybe not the Borg
Yes,
situation because that one was very personal
that.
for
Yeah,
Picard.
oh yeah.
So
Picard
I
would have
get that. And in some
that
ways
would have been ruined.
Generations was a handoff movie, so you got a lot going on there. But this one in particular, I and I don't know why, but it would have been so much more interesting for me if we had Riker doing all of this investigation stuff, Riker leading all of that, and Picard is back leading on the ship, and maybe that's just
Mhm.
not what Patrick Stewart was down for. I don't know, but I don't know. You tell me on the show though. I don't seem to remember the ones that I watched of it that it was that way. Like Riker got plenty of work to do on that show.
Oh, Riker was always on the away missions. In fact, when they encountered the Borg and they went, I mean, he was the one that led the away team. He was so used to it that during the Best of Both Worlds Part One and Two, when he said, "All right, we're going to lead an away team to go down there and get on the Borg ship to rescue Picard," and then Troy says, "That's actually inappropriate. You're the captain. You have to stay here with the ship." And he didn't like that. He didn't like that at all. But that is his role. But now we're seeing these movies, captain's prerogatives. Like again, at first contact, Picard did come back on the ship, and then Riker went down to the planet. But they were not. They were just two separate areas. But it's one of the things that was proposed in the script was to kill off Data. And Brent Spiner was all aboard. He's like, "I'm aging out of this character. We got to do something. We got to give him some finality here because I'm aging out of this. Can only put on so many makeup, but I'm getting older." And then Patrick Stewart said, "Nope." He had the final say. He's like, we're not killing you. Sorry." And in fact, when they handed Brent Spiner the script at the bottom, it says, "Better luck next time."
Oh, yeah. See, that's the other thing too, is all of these things seem to be triggered around the malfunctioning android. And at some point,
Mhm.
we have to stop putting him in those situations. Like he's very useful. He's an incredible tool. He's an incredible being. I mean, you could say he's sentient enough to, he's a being. He's part of the crew. Why do they keep sticking him in these bad places? Where something bad is
Uh,
going to happen all the time. I mean, I know it's the way to kick the plot off, but besides plot armor, what's the other reason to do it? Because it doesn't make any sense. I'm with him, by the way. They
yeah, you're
should they
right.
should have killed his character off. And I see why
Yeah, I
he was
mean,
tired of it at this point. So
I agree, but do it in a better movie. If
yeah,
you're
well,
going
yeah,
to
that's
do it in a
yeah.
better
Don't do
movie,
it
and not
this
to
thing.
these
Yeah,
nobodies.
and
Yeah,
maybe Patrick Stewart knew like we're going to do that, but not this time. Which
yeah.
they never do. But there's that, and we talked a little bit about the Sona, but the Baku and their whole like life extending properties and all that. I actually kind of
Mhm.
like that. I think it's sort of neat. And I wanted to ask you, like, because they have this argument in there about like the ethical principles of encountering that society and then introducing advanced technology in front of them when they are aware of it, but they shun it. So it's almost like
Right.
forcing the Amish to use microwaves or something like that.
Exactly. That's exactly it. I think if they would have just stuck with that and not had this good versus evil thing, and
Yeah.
just had a movie about exploring this planet and uncovering some of the mysteries of the planet, would have made for a much, much better movie. Really, really would have. I mean, there could have been like some sinister plot somewhere, but no
Well,
clear bad guy. Like you don't
Well,
know what's
well,
going on.
maybe
I mean,
it's just nature happening, and you say like, "Hey, that star is going to explode. We see it happening. If you all don't come with us, you're going to be wiped out." And the Baku telling the
mhm.
Federation, "That's where the chips fall. Then that's where they fall." But there's a
Yeah,
great ethical dilemma. You can have good conversations and have a neat space exploration,
that would have
movie
been
about
great.
that.
That would have been a phenomenal movie. And you've got to think the Prime Directive. How do you
Right?
reconcile this with the Prime Directive? It's like if we violate the Prime Directive, we save these people. But
Mm-hmm.
if we don't violate the Prime Directive, then they could potentially all die. And so it was. I feel like there could have been a lot more a bigger moral story there, and a lot more in depth about right versus wrong, the limits of a Prime Directive. But again, they needed a blockbuster, and they needed some action. They need some phaser rifles and ships and explosions, and it's just you don't need that. This is not
Yeah.
what Star Trek is supposed to be about. I mean, granted, there wasn't a lot, but it was still unnecessary, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think we're on to something there too, because that is the central part of this is the ethical dilemmas of all of these things. And you can argue like, well, would people want to go see something like that when they expect an action movie because they got one last time, right? But I still think you
Mhm.
could have sold this as a, hey, it's holiday time. Let's go have an ethical discussion with an exploration movie. And we can still have some fun with it. There can be, some tense and some action, but you don't have to shoot them and blow them up because Star Trek again was
Yeah,
supposed to always be above all that stuff anyway, and it is in a
yeah.
lot of ways. I mean, this cinematic retrospective we've done has really taught me that and reminded me of that. And they play with some of that stuff, Picard's decision to disobey direct orders, and the
Mhm.
crew's suspicion and how all of that works. I I found that fascinating. And then when they finally revealed that it was, another holo ship or whatever, like on one hand, I was like, oh, we're doing the holodeck thing again. I was like, oh, you know what though? This is actually a smart use of that. Like again, there's something in the
Mhm.
kernel of that works, but it's weighed down by the hamminess of the sauna plot on top of it.
Yeah, no, there are elements in there that could have been explored more, that could have been used more, expanded upon, but again, it was going back to the Sona, and there's so much that could have been done with that. And speaking of the actors, so two things I read about were that there were two actors that were considered for roles in the movie, Sally Field, and then they had talked. They didn't talk to him, but there was talk in the writing room about bringing in Arnold Schwarzenegger to play the bad guy, and that would have been
Okay.
very interesting to see how that would have played out.
Hold on a
I
minute.
mean, this is yeah. No,
Well,
they
but see, that
considered
would have
it.
been on the heels of a super hammy performance in Batman and Robin the year before. So it would have gone
No,
along
that's
with it.
very true.
I mean, it
Yeah,
would have
that's very
fit
true. That
because
might not have helped.
yeah, I mean, F. Murray Abraham's a good actor. I mean, Amadeus is an incredible
Yeah,
piece of
yeah.
fiction. It's a piece of historical fiction, but it's a heck of a story. And then
Hmm.
he was in he's in Scarface and he's done all kinds of stuff.
Oh, I love them in Scarface.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but in this, he's just clearly mailing this in completely. So Arnold
Oh,
would have been interesting to look at, but the problem with Arnold is that even at this point in his life, in the late '90s, he's still a specimen. So you look at
hmm.
him, he's got charisma for days, but you're just, it would be hard to sort of not see Arnold in all of it. You know what I mean?
And that would
That's,
have been fine. I would have loved it, honestly. I would have loved it because if you're gonna have a bad guy, make him imposing.
yeah,
Make this person just like, oh my God, I'm never gonna fight this guy. This guy is absolutely all about death. Like we don't stand a
yeah.
chance.
Sally Field as Angie, I guess that would work. Like, I would have been okay with that. Like, it was.
Yeah, it would have worked.
It would have been
Yeah,
okay. I mean, it would have been a familiar face because no, I mean, again, most people didn't know who Donna Murphy was, and they didn't
right.
respond to her that way. And she gives a fine performance, but she's given nothing to do like every other woman
Limited
in the
by the
script.
script. Yeah.
And
Oh,
maybe
absolutely.
Sally Field read it and said, "I was in Norma Ray, damn it! Like I'm not going to do this
Yeah, it's like, I'm
nothing
sorry. Here's my
thing."
Oscar. This is
Yeah,
beneath
exactly.
this. Yeah.
Also, I was in Mrs. Doubtfire, which I was awesome in, by the way, and I was the only
Yeah.
normal
Oh
person
yeah.
in that besides Pierce Brosnan, and I was right, and everybody needs to get on my side for that. No, I mean I get why she would have passed on it because it's not great, and again like all of this stuff that they play with about the prime directive versus the potential benefits of these particles and what if we could we could wipe out all kinds of disease and problems by bringing people here, yeah, but the more you draw on it, the more it damages the planet. It's not you, it's like you would run the fountain of youth down, basically.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
the they play with that dilemma, but then they just back away from it because it's almost like the Federation is it's the same thing that like the Weyland-Yutani Corporation is always trying to do in all the Alien sequels. They're trying to weaponize the alien thing and they
Hmm.
just get so deep into that sometimes. It's like at some point somebody in a boardroom is going, "We have sunk trillions into this and a lot of dead people. Maybe we should let this go." Like this is not gonna work. I don't know. I feel like that all of that stuff is given such short shrift because a lot of this movie is Picard just in these, I don't know, monologues that seem to go on forever about, the choices he has to make and the consequences of these actions and all that stuff. But then he also goes along and does insurrective activity. So I don't know. It was very strange.
Yeah, no, it was extremely strange. Um, it there were definitely different versions of the script. I know there was one version of script where they just wanted the main bad guy to be the Romulans. And then there was another one that involved, and actually this script got pretty far down the line before they went into production or anything like that. But it was one that Patrick Stewart approved of. There was one where they would have encountered this guy who was classmates with Picard at the academy, but he's been off, and all of a sudden it turns out like he's in Romulan space, and the Romulans are after him, and Picard's really ready to risk it all and be court-martialed and everything to go save his friend. And it turns out there's a Fountain of Youth planet that the Romulans are trying to take over, and Picard has to stop that from happening and also rescue his friend at the same time. And at the end, Picard basically gets stripped of his command, and they would have killed off Data as well. So that was a potential story. And like I said, there were
That's
a
a
lot of details in it that got further down the line, but at the
that's a
end of the day,
way
the
better
production,
idea than what we got.
yeah, oh, way better. But at the end of the day, the production companies were like, Paramount was like, no, we don't want that. We want this. And like I
Well,
said,
mhm.
it had success at the theater, but it was just not, it was terrible.
Well, I'm saying it had success at the theater. I mean, it made, $40 million more than its budget, but that's probably breaking even when you look at it's not
The
exactly one to
marketing
one
cost,
in
yeah.
advertising and budget at the time, but it's pretty darn close. And so it didn't do great, and I don't think it left
Hmm.
everybody just clamoring for more. And we got to remember too, these people don't have a show to go back to anymore. It's in syndication,
Right.
but that's done.
Yeah.
So all they are is movies at this point. So when you come out with a bad one, it's okay, wow. Because like Generations, it has its problems, but that kind of left everybody energized. Then First Contact is a
Hmm.
home run. It's awesome. And to keep with the baseball metaphor, now we've had 7 games of just straight strikeouts. Like that's all this is going to be no base anymore. They're making mistakes in the field. And I don't know, man, it really just sinks it in a lot of ways. Because even when they revealed the big reveal of the sauna being, like I said in the plot summary, real shocked that they were exiled Baku or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Their motivations, I get why they would want to go back and get their, try to rejuvenate themselves and all that, but I didn't understand their whole revenge thing. Like you rejected the religion, you don't get to come anymore. Like that's the part of the deal of being a
Yeah,
Baku.
no, yeah, you shunned our ways. There's no place for you on this planet. There's only 600 of them, so there's not like there's room for them to come back and say, "All right, we're going to have our society with all this technological advancement, and you can stay over here." That's not how it's worked. They're gonna use that technological advancement to harvest the rings, which they tried to do, or they push it upon the more agrarian Amish type, the Baku. Yeah, it
I mean, you
was.
don't go to an AC/DC show and want the acoustic set. It's
Yeah,
just
no,
not what they do. Or maybe the other way, you don't go to a Mumford and Son show and expect them to break into Black and Black halfway through it.
right, exactly.
So
Yeah, no,
yeah, that doesn't work. John Denver's not going to go electric for you. That's
no,
not what he
and
does.
I that's where when we talked about the cast kind of phoning it in and just having fun and not taking it comes across not taking it seriously is that whole fountain of youth. Like suddenly their energy is rejuvenated. Jordy can see again without his visor. Riker
I,
shaves his beard.
I would tell you, I took that
Worf
as
gets a
is
zit.
yeah, as Riker was like, I'm tired of this beard, it's itchy, and he decided to shave it back. And then I think LeVar Burton was like, I'm tired of wearing this damn thing, and
Yeah,
he's like, I
yeah,
I get to take the visor off, and I'm sure it was part of his
yeah.
contract or something.
Oh, probably so. And it was. I mean, you could say they were all having fun with that, but at the same time, I was like, all right, this is getting a little campy
I
now,
mean, yeah,
and not
that's the
campy in a
actors.
good way.
That's the actors having fun with something. Okay, so to go back to earlier reference, Star Trek 4, they're clearly all having a lot of fun in
Hmm.
at then modern day San Francisco in the 80s, right? It's
Hmm.
particularly DeForest Kelly. He probably has the most fun of anybody in that whole thing. But it works as an audience because we have a relation point with that. They're in our time now. And what would that be like
Yeah,
if you came from a
yeah.
society that didn't
There's a
have any
connection
money?
there. Yeah,
Yeah, and but we have no connection to this except for going like, oh yeah, this would be like if we made the Amish people like do electricity all the time or something like that. Like that would be really fair to them. Okay,
yeah.
and that's kind of it. I mean, it doesn't really work, and
It doesn't resonate on any level. Nobody has any
no,
connection to them. You've never seen these people. We can't relate to them in any way.
mm-mm.
Um, yeah, it's yeah, it doesn't. Like I said, there could have been so many ways they could have done this better.
I think the thing
So many ways.
you've hit on too is that we have no relation to these groups. We have had nothing
Hmm.
with them. There is no Borg story. There's no Romulan story. There's no Klingon background. There's
No.
we're having to introduce them, and they introduce them so quickly and so um, dash that there's no reason to really root for any of them. Because the Federation
Yeah,
comes
and the
on like
back
the bad guys.
yeah, in the Baku, they come across as a race that would have been on a next gen episode, but a forgettable next gen episode. It's
Yeah.
like the one you skip over so you can get to the good episode.
Yeah, it's
Like,
one of
oh
the
well,
the
this is the
monster of the
episode
week
with the Baku.
episodes when you're not
Yeah, and then
doing
the
the
next
main plot. Yeah.
yeah, and then the next week is a Q episode. So you're like, oh, this is the throwaway one. Just burn through this real quick and get to the Q one because that's more interesting. It's interesting. You can do a movie and the cast have fun with it, but still do something really good. I mean, I just finished up White Lotus season 3, and I've been looking at all the behind the scenes and the social media. That cast genuinely loved each other. They got along
Hmm.
so
I think
well,
Jason
and
Isaacs said that was like theater camp on in a real
yeah.
expensive
Yeah,
hotel.
7 weeks. Yeah, 7 weeks of theater camp. Like they just, I mean, you see these lifelong friendships that form, but they ended up working on this really good, deep story.
Hmm.
And you could relate to different people and different characters in certain ways. Whereas, Insurrection, yes, you've got the Star Trek crew, you've seen them all, but what they're going through with the Baku and the Soda, we can't relate to that. And
Yeah,
there's no redeeming qualities for anything. And the people we can relate to, they're just kind of phoning it in and just looks like they're getting paid to have a fun time. And
yeah.
we're like, oh, that's I don't
It's
I want some
it's
seriousness here.
yeah, it's fine, but it's not really great. We got to talk
Yeah.
about the climax here because it goes down. It's Picard and Rafa going at each other, or as I say, Patrick Stewart and whatever stunt double was filling in for F. Murray Abraham with a lot of makeup.
Yes.
He wasn't
Yeah.
doing any of that. Picard clearly been working out, so he's trying to show off the physique again, which is fine. But do you have that going on? What'd you make of the whole like he turns one of the crew on his own people again or whatever with the promise of redemption and things? That talk about something that felt like high school theater camp. That definitely felt like something that would come out of something like that.
It did. It very weak script writing. It was something that you saw very early on in the movie. You're like, oh, this guy's gonna turn. He's obviously gonna turn. He's gonna go back to the planet. And it was just weak. I didn't like the climate. It wasn't very climactic. The explosion of the harvester was very cheap looking. F. Murray Abraham's death was very cheap looking. This turning this guy was very predictable. And I think they tried to make up for the budget because of all the cool shots of the Enterprise, and they just wanted to throw as many close-up cool shots of the Enterprise as they could in there. And I can't imagine how much they spent on just that. I mean, it was cool seeing the Enterprise because that's my favorite Enterprise, but it was still like overkill. Like, okay, now you're
Yeah.
just putting it out there to put it out there because you realize you spent too much time on this planet and nobody cares.
So this is the Enterprise E we should name, right? Like that's the
Yes,
one in this.
yes.
Okay, all right, because this is the one that will continue on and even get some further uh looks in not only the movies, but I think in some of the further series and things like that that it comes forward. What is it about this one that you
Mhm.
really like though, since you said it was your favorite version of
Oh,
the ship?
I love the design. It is such a sleek design. I love the nacelles. I love the shape of it. I love that it's got quantum torpedoes. I just everything about it is a beautiful, beautiful ship. It is the most beautiful Enterprise for me. If I could command any Enterprise, it would be that one. Absolutely that one.
I really liked the way that they had redone the bridge, and it
Hmm.
was almost like an aesthetic look of Star Trek: The Motion Picture, but with brighter lights and
Yeah,
a bigger expanse, and you could tell how much bigger it was than everything else, you know. But and that's why I say it's a waste of a good ship and a waste of a good chance to let's do a space exploration movie that's not an action movie. Let's take a
right.
gamble and try that, and you could
Yeah,
have with a really cool ship. But as it is, I mean, it only gets a couple of good shots. And that's what's
and it does. And then,
disappointing about it.
sadly, and I'd love to see honestly a Star Trek movie where the Enterprise doesn't get the holy hell kicked out of it.
Right?
The last, get this, so after Star Trek 5, every Star Trek movie, the Enterprise doesn't just take some hits, it gets just beat senseless. So you got Generations, the D is destroyed. You got First Contact. I mean, they're basically the Borg are running amok on the Enterprise. They're basically tearing it up from the inside. In this, it gets attacked by the sonar and takes some heavy damage. Have to eject the warp core. Good luck getting home on that. And then you've got and then in Nemesis, I mean, it really almost completely destroys the E. And then in the new in the new movies, the Chris Pine movies, the J.J. Abrams movies, it's like the ship just keeps getting hammered and hammered and hammered to the point where by the time you get to Beyond, it's done. I was like, why do you always got to pick on the ship?
I know,
You
like at
know?
some point, like the new generations of the ship, it seems like shield technology has not evolved with anything else with the
Yeah,
ship.
yeah, oh yeah.
So either that or
I mean, you're
weapons are
sitting
in
there
front of
like
them. So
yeah, I mean, you're sitting there in this one too. The bridge is exploding. There's smoke and fire going out. They're like shields at 60%. I was like, doesn't look like you got any.
yeah,
How
no,
is the
yeah.
ship the bridge about to explode and you're like still 60% shield?
What's bad about it though is it does look like it's about to explode, but with like a really good cheap set of fireworks that are left over from the 4th of July. Like it's not like, oh, I
Yeah,
forgot we had these. Let's set these off on New Year's. But yeah, it's I don't know. It's maybe that's the message about technology and progress, or maybe it's just a badly made cheap movie, as it
I
were.
think
I
it's a
mean,
badly
an
made movie,
expensively cheap
honestly.
movie. So yeah,
Hmm.
so
Yeah.
well, I think we're at the part of the podcast where it's time to give final thoughts and popcorn ratings. So I don't think this will surprise anybody, Nate, but what are yours for Star Trek Insurrection?
Oh, I'm giving this a. It's hard to give a popcorn rating because it's Star Trek, but it's the worst Star Trek movie. This is my least favorite one. I know some people say Nemesis. I know some people say Star Trek 5. This one for me is the worst. At least I can get through Star Trek 5. There's some eye rolls when I do, but this one is just one that it is a it is a job to get through this, to watch this through without like, oh, this is so bad. Not my favorite by a long shot. It just that's combining my disappointment with the expectation that was set after First Contact. So that I think contributes a lot to my dislike for this film because where Star Trek was at that time, this was the pivot moment for the franchise. You're on the upward trajectory. This is the moment you either take it to the next level, keep it going, or you start the decline. And this is where, in my opinion, the Star Trek universe as I grew up with starts to decline. And by what, 5 years later, let's see, by 7 years after this, there's no Star Trek anymore. Enterprise is off, Voyager is off, Deep Space Nine's off. There's no more next gen movies. It's done. And this was, I think, the beginning of that downfall because you had the next gen crew. This is their universe now. These are their films, and this is where it starts to fall apart. I was kind of hoping we would at least gotten 6 films like we did with the original series crew with the next
Mhm.
gen crew, but we got 4, and this was the turning point of where it started to go down.
I feel like I'm going to give a musical analogy to this. And this was a guy I was a big fan of in the early 2000s and things. Ryan Adams is an incredible all
Mm-hmm.
country rocker. And he came out, I liked some of his band work and things like that. But he came out with an album called Heartbreaker, which was really good, had some really neat stuff on it. It was going in a different direction for that kind of music. And I mean, I'd liked Whiskey Town, his band. And so then he came out in 2001 with an album called Gold, which is one of my favorite. albums of the genre, always, and I still listen
Mhm.
to it to the day. And then he followed it up with a record called Demolition. And to say how much I hated that album and still hate that album to this day, Nate, is about the way you feel about From First Contact to this movie. It's just a
Yeah.
clunker in every way. Like there's a moment or two that's decent in there. The song Nuclear might be that off that album, but everything else is such a downgrade. And what's bad is like there's some good lyric stuff and there's some interesting musical stuff going in there, but it sounds like Ryan Adams trying to be the Strokes but drunker or something.
Mm.
And it's not really like
Yeah.
it's not really working. And I feel like this movie is okay, everybody's having a good time, except Brent Spiner, who clearly doesn't want to be there anymore. See, we didn't even talk about Data. He not only do I want my character to be dead, then fine, I'll play him like he's dead, because he had no
Yeah, he
energy
did.
at all, and
None.
and everybody else is kind of goofing around. And for an episode of a show that can be fun because you want your cast to have a break and in between all the
Right,
series.
right.
Buffy did this all the time, Angel too. But in a movie, we got to keep it going, y'all, and or we got to have a theme that's universal. And there's just
Mhm.
nothing here to hang on to. I'm glad to hear you say that it's your least favorite one because it was so far my least favorite one too, and it's one that I can say I will never watch again. Like there's
Yeah,
no
probably
reason
me
to
neither.
ever go back to this.
No.
In under any circumstance. It's a real downgrade as a Trek movie. And I don't remember much about Nemesis. I know I didn't see it in theaters. I ended up renting it. And I don't remember much about it because I've only ever seen it the one time. So I'm curious to go back to it because I know it's our last, run with the TNG crew here before we get into J.J. Abrams' world. And I'm hopeful that they can rebound and stick the landing. But I guess we'll see next time when we
Yeah, when you
wrap
see
it
it, it'll
up.
be that. It's also not one of my favorites, but there are a lot of talking points for this movie. A lot. I mean, we go from this happy fountain of youth to literally dark, like figuratively and literally. Like the scimitar is black. The Remans wear all black. They're attacking in the pitch black of space. I mean, it's dark, and it's as another pivot, I think, at this point, and the analogy you made with Ryan Adams, the analogy I can also compare with is Metallica.
Hmm.
You have And Justice for All, which is great, and then you got the Black Album, which was just, oh my God, just peak
Yes.
Metallica. And then you're like, oh man, what's next? What's next? And then Load comes out. You're like,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
whoa,
Load and
okay, what
reload
is this?
or
Load and Reload. That's Insurrection and Nemesis for me. Yeah, it's just
okay.
like, oh wow.
Hold on to that because I can relate with those. Yeah, I have thoughts about load and reload that I might have to revisit now. But nothing will ever though be the sonic assault that Death Magnetic was on my senses. For,
uh,
for everyone that talks about
yeah.
there being no bass on Injustice for All, I don't know that Trujillo even bothered to play on
No,
Death
I don't
Magnetic.
think
You
so.
can't hear it. So
No, definitely
over
not.
the unholy amount of tenor in that mix, but that's another day on Donahue and probably another podcast. But no, yeah, I have lots of thoughts about the mixing job on certain records, but yeah, it is a major step away. That's for sure. And I'm hoping they can correct it by this last chapter before we get into Lynn's Farrorama. That is the J.J. Abrams world, but that's
Yeah,
another
no,
day.
I can't wait to hear your thoughts on Nemesis. I will say it's not one of my favorites. It's down at the bottom for me, but it is one I have watched a few times actually, because they're just one day I was just like, oh, whatever, I'll just watch Nemesis.
Well, it already can't be as bad as this. I know that. We've hit the low rung. There's no way it's going to be like this. So it's
And
already an
I
upgrade
will
in that
say
level.
it has a really cool beginning.
Okay.
It captures you in right at the beginning. You're like, oh, this is going to be a very different movie than Insurrection. This is going to be a lot different.
Well, I'm looking forward to revisiting that then because it'll be a good way to wrap it up with our next generation here as we continue through this next leg of our Star Trek cinematic journey. Of course, folks, you can find all the other episodes in our archives wherever you find podcasts. Just search for Filmstrip Podcast, and you can follow us on all the social media at Filmstrip Pod. Please subscribe, tell others about the show, and check it out wherever you can. And if you haven't checked it out already, our episodes are now all on YouTube as well. So you don't get to see our lovely faces, but you do get to hear the audio nonetheless. So give it a listen. We appreciate the support. Until next time, thank you for listening. Film Strip.
Thank you for listening to Film Strip. You can find more episodes on our website, filmstrippodcast.com. The Filmstrip theme music is produced and performed by Frozen Lake 121. All content used or discussed in these podcast episodes is the property of the respective owners and used under the Fair Use Act, Section 504, C2, Title 17.